The Irtysh River, a titan among waterways, carves a path across continents, its journey a testament to geological time and human endeavor. From its nascent springs high in the Mongolian mountains, it flows for over 4,000 kilometers, traversing three nations, China, Kazakhstan, and Russia, before finally surrendering its waters to the Ob. Remarkably, the Irtysh predates most of the mountain ranges it navigates. Geologists have established its existence long before the Altai Mountains were thrust skyward. This ancient river, with an almost sentient persistence, simply cut its path through the rising peaks, maintaining a course set tens of millions of years ago. Along its banks, a tapestry of human history unfolds. Cities that have stood for 3 millennia lie near settlements barely 30 years old, with vast expanses of time and development seemingly absent in between. Its depths hold artifacts from civilizations yet unnamed, and its waters teem with fish that, for generations, have navigated its immense length, their ancient migratory routes etched into their very being. Today we explore 13 mysteries of the Irtysh. The final enigma seeks to unravel why this colossal river has, for millennia, drawn people from the farthest corners of the earth, and why its allure persists even now. Settle in, for our journey begins. In the Karaganda region of Kazakhstan, nestled amongst granite cliffs on the banks of an Irtysh tributary, stands a testament to a forgotten era. A Bronze Age urban complex that archaeologists deem one of Central Asia's most enigmatic. Known as Kent, it flourished around the 14th century BCE. Yet, its existence defies the conventional understanding of nomadic settlements of that period. Kent was no mere campsite, nor a fortified encampment. It was a true city. Sprawling across approximately 100 hectares, its design reveals a sophisticated urban plan. Streets and blocks are laid out with precision, anchored by stone foundations of meticulously rectangular houses. Evidence of advanced metallurgy abounds, with workshops dedicated to smelting bronze and working copper. Granaries suggest a settled agricultural society. All of this was constructed from granite quarried directly from the surrounding cliffs. The builders masterfully integrated their structures into the natural landscape, utilizing the undulating terrain and rocky outcrops as foundations, weaving their city into the very fabric of the mountains. Systematic excavations, initiated by Soviet archaeologists in the 1970s, uncovered a cultural layer several meters deep, indicating prolonged, continuous habitation. Artifacts unearthed spoke of extensive trade networks, tin, a metal not found in the immediate region, and ornaments whose materials point to connections with the Volga, the Altai, and Central Asia. But the true enigma of Kent lies in its layout. The city's design is a triumph of urban planning, maximizing the use of the rugged, rocky terrain. This sophisticated organization demanded foresight and meticulous pre-construction planning. Streets could not have been laid out without a complete understanding of the adjacent blocks. Someone, in the 14th century BCE, conceived and designed this entire city before a single stone was laid. Hasty flight, but through a deliberate, organized departure. The people simply left, taking what they could carry, leaving behind their stone city in the silent embrace of the cliffs. Who were they? Where did they go? And why did they abandon what generations had built? The Irtysh offers no answers. On the banks of the Irtysh during the Bronze Age, from approximately 2,000 to 1,200 years before the Common Era, flourished one of the most widespread cultures of the ancient world. The Andronovo culture spanned a vast territory from the Urals to the Yenisei, and from the steppes of Kazakhstan to the foothills of the Altai Mountains. This encompassed an area of roughly 4 million square kilometers, one of the largest cultural spheres in human history for its time. The Irtysh River served as the central axis of this expansive domain. Along its fertile banks, Andronovo settlements arose. These were not mere transient camps, but fortified villages with deliberate layouts, advanced metallurgical workshops, and sophisticated water management systems. They smelted bronze, mined copper, and engaged in trade networks stretching thousands of kilometers. Genetic research over the past few decades has revealed that the Andronovo people are ancestral to a significant portion of the modern Eurasian population. Their genetic markers are found in peoples from India to Scandinavia, suggesting a direct ancestral link between the inhabitants of the Irtysh River banks 3 to 4 millennia ago and a majority of those reading these words today. But where did they vanish? Or, more accurately, where did they go? This is a question that genetics has posed but not yet fully answered. The Andronovo culture did not disappear abruptly. Rather, it dissolved into several subsequent cultural waves. Its people became integrated into the Scythians, the Sarmatians, and other nomadic groups whose descendants eventually dispersed across Eurasia. The Irtysh bore witness to the genesis of this grand migration. In 1715 and 1716, Peter the Great received collections from Siberia. These comprised gold artifacts, ornaments, figurines, and vessels discovered in burial mounds along the Irtysh. The collection numbered over 100 items and was so remarkable that Peter issued a special decree for the collection of similar finds throughout Siberia. This marked the first state-sponsored act for the protection of archaeological heritage in Russian history. The artifacts of the Siberian collection are executed in the animal style, a characteristic of the Scythian Saka artistic tradition. In this style, animal figures interweave with one another in complex, dynamic compositions. The technical execution astounded the jewelers of St. Petersburg at the time, showcasing intricate filigree work, cloisonné enamel, and inlays of turquoise and coral. But from where did coral, originating from the Indian Ocean, find its way to the Siberian steppes 2,000 years prior, through a chain of trade exchanges spanning thousands of kilometers? This extraordinary collection is now housed in the Hermitage Museum. The provenance of many of these objects remains uncertain. They were acquired from bugrovshiki, professional grave robbers who operated in the Irtysh region during the 17th and 18th centuries, leaving no documentation of their finds. The burial mounds they plundered have been irrevocably destroyed, their archaeological context lost forever. What exactly lay within these disturbed kurgans beyond the gold remains unknown. Tobolsk stands on a high cape, at the confluence of the Tobol and the Irtysh rivers. This solitary elevation, a colossal sentinel against the horizon, stands as the sole geographical anomaly for hundreds of kilometers. To the west, the Siberian plain stretches, an unbroken expanse of flatness, rendering this promontory an island rising from the Earth's floor. It was here, in the year 1587, that Tobolsk was founded, the first significant Russian city to take root in the vastness of Siberia. Geologists categorize this hill as a remnant, a stubborn fragment of a more ancient, elevated landscape, preserved while the surrounding territories were meticulously sculpted and smoothed by the relentless forces of erosion. Yet, what truly distinguishes Tobolsk and its striking promontory is not merely its geological genesis, but its profound history predating any Russian presence. Centuries before the arrival of the Tsar's men, this very bluff was the seat of the Siberian Khanate, the formidable capital of Iskar, and before that, another settlement of unknown origin. Archaeological investigations reveal a continuous human occupation of this site spanning several millennia. Across diverse epochs and peoples, this specific hill, perched above the confluence of two mighty rivers, was consistently chosen as a place of settlement. Strategically, the choice is undeniable. Elevated vantage points, access to vital water resources. However, the sheer density of cultural strata accumulated here suggests a significance that transcended mere military strategy. Within the subterranean vaults of the Tobolsk Kremlin and along the precipitous edges of the bluff, builders and archaeologists periodically unearth artifacts that defy easy categorization, objects disconnected from any single recognized historical period of the city. A comprehensive, systematic excavation of the entire promontory, however, has never been undertaken. The Irtysh River, a lifeline through this land, serves as one of the primary spawning grounds for several species of sturgeon. The Siberian sturgeon, a relic fish that has navigated these waters since the age of dinosaurs, undertakes an extraordinary migratory journey, ascending the river for distances up to 2,000 kilometers to reach its ancestral spawning grounds. This represents one of the most extensive migratory routes observed among freshwater fish globally. The precise navigational mechanisms employed by sturgeon over such vast distances remain incompletely understood. These fish exhibit an uncanny ability to return to the very section of the river where they themselves were born, demonstrating an accuracy that can pinpoint specific stretches of the riverbed. A form of chemical memory, imprinted by the unique water composition of their natal environment, offers a partial explanation. Magnetic sensitivity, another contributing factor, is also proposed. But how precisely these creatures integrate these disparate sensory cues across 2,000 kilometers of river with its myriad tributaries, sinuous bends, and fluctuating currents remains a complex puzzle. A comprehensive model of this extraordinary process has yet to be constructed. Indigenous Kazakh and Siberian fishermen possessed intimate knowledge of the sturgeon's migratory routes long before the advent of formal scientific inquiry. Their understanding was remarkably precise, enabling them to predict the fish's arrival with an accuracy measured in mere days. This invaluable knowledge was passed down orally, cultivated through meticulous observation of subtle environmental indicators that the fishermen themselves could not always articulate in scientific terms. They noted the nuanced color of the water, the behavior of avian flocks, the subtle variations in the river's flow at specific points. The Siberian sturgeon is a creature of remarkable longevity, capable of living up to 100 years and reaching lengths of 2 meters. Individuals caught today, theoretically, could have witnessed the banks of the Irtysh as they appeared in the early 20th century. They carry within them the memory of a river that no longer exists. A river with different water levels, altered shorelines, and a changed composition. In the upper reaches of the Irtysh, originating in the mountains of Mongolia, the sturgeon's ancient journey begins. Before it flows into the vast Kazakh steppe, the Irtysh River bears a distinct appellation: Chorny Irtysh, the Black Irtysh. This is no poetic metaphor, but a literal description. In its upper reaches, the water's dark hue stems from a high concentration of organic matter leached from the mountain peatlands. The river's genesis lies within the remote mountainous terrains of Mongolia and China. The precise point where its main channel originates is a subject of ongoing debate among hydrologists. Depending on which tributary is deemed principal, the source can shift by tens of kilometers. This ambiguity is not uncommon for major rivers, and pinpointing an exact source is often an approximation. However, in the case of the Irtysh, the dispute remains officially unresolved. The region where the Irtysh begins is sparsely populated. Expeditions to this remote area are rare. The last comprehensive hydrological expedition to its upper course dates back to the Soviet era. Since then, the region has not been systematically surveyed. What transpires at the river's very inception, which glaciers feed it, how their volume fluctuates, and which tributaries carry water from yet unmapped sources remains largely unknown. The Kazakh name for the river, Irtys, traces its roots to a Turkic word whose meaning linguists interpret in various ways. One theory suggests great river or big water. Another posits male river, in contrast to the perceived feminine essence of stagnant waters. The word for its upper reaches points to a root meaning breaking through, which aligns with the river's geological reality as it carves through the mountains. The definitive interpretation, however, remains elusive. Omsk, founded in 1716 as a military fortress, stands at the confluence of the Om and Irtysh rivers. During the construction of the initial fortifications, soldiers unearthed traces of an earlier settlement, wooden structures descending into the steep riverbank. This discovery was documented in the construction team's reports and preserved in the archives. For the subsequent 3 centuries, Omsk grew and was built upon this very site. Each new construction project yielded further findings. In the 1960s, during the laying of a sewer system in the city center, workers exposed sections of wooden decking, clearly predating the fortress's establishment. Radiocarbon dating of one of these timbers placed its origin around the 12th century CE. The identity of those who constructed these wooden platforms here, 5 centuries before Omsk, remains a mystery. In 2007, while excavating for a shopping center in central Omsk, builders uncovered a wall constructed from unfired brick. This building technique was unusual for Siberian construction, but characteristic of medieval Khazar architectural traditions. The find was documented, photographed, and subsequently destroyed during further construction. No scientific investigation was conducted. What this structure precisely was, and who built Khazar-style masonry in Siberia, remains an open question. For nearly 500 years, European sources have spoken of a legendary golden woman, a sacred idol worshipped by the peoples of Western Siberia. The legend of the Golden Woman, or Zolotaya Baba, has echoed through the vast Siberian wilderness for centuries. Its origins are shrouded in the mists of time, with the earliest documented mention dating back to the 15th century and the last reliable account emerging in the 18th. Yet, the object itself remains elusive, a phantom of history. Descriptions of this revered idol vary wildly across historical records. Some accounts speak of a golden statue depicting a woman cradling a child. Others describe it as a vessel from which melodic sounds, perhaps greetings, would emanate. A third description paints a picture of a wooden idol, intricately covered with metallic plates. These profound discrepancies have led a significant number of researchers to believe that Zolotaya Baba was not a singular artifact, but rather a collective representation, an encompassing term for an entire class of sacred objects venerated by the indigenous peoples of Siberia. However, amidst these conflicting narratives, a consistent thread emerges from several sources. As Christian missionaries pushed into Siberia during the 16th and 17th centuries, the local populations, seeking to protect their spiritual heritage, would move their idols. The Golden Woman, whatever its form, was repeatedly relocated, spirited away each time the presence of outsiders drew near. The last credible indications of its whereabouts point towards the middle reaches of the Irtysh River basin. Yet, no specific location is ever named in the historical texts. Expeditions, both from Imperial Russia and the Soviet era, scoured these lands at various times, driven by the allure of this legendary treasure. All searches proved fruitless. Perhaps the Golden Woman never existed in the form described by European chroniclers. Or perhaps it remains hidden, concealed within the dense forests along the Irtysh, its hiding place so ingeniously guarded that 3 centuries of relentless searching have yielded nothing. Along the rocky outcrops that line the upper and middle Irtysh, a multitude of petroglyphs, rock carvings from diverse epochs stretching from the Bronze Age to the early Middle Ages, have been recorded. Thousands of these ancient images adorn the landscape, though the vast majority have never been systematically studied. A distinctive characteristic of these Irtysh petroglyphs is their deliberate placement relative to the water. A significant portion of these images are etched onto rock faces that, during periods of high water, are submerged. This is no mere coincidence. The selection of these specific, periodically inundated rocks was intentional. For much of the year, these carvings appear to gaze out from the river itself. Several interpretations exist for this curious phenomenon. One suggests a ritualistic purpose. The drawings were not intended for human eyes, but for the spirits of the river, meant to be seen from the water. Another posits a practical reason. These waterside rocks offered accessible canvases, their surfaces convenient for the artist's work. A third theory proposes that, in a more distant past, with historically higher water levels, these very rocks would have stood above the flood line, only later becoming submerged due to shifts in the river's course or climate. Amongst the wealth of Irtysh petroglyphs, a few stand out, figures that defy the known artistic repertoire of the region. One such image depicts a clearly anthropomorphic figure, yet with disproportionately long limbs and a head devoid of recognizable features. It bears a striking resemblance to similar figures found at Lake Onega in Karelia, thousands of kilometers away. Is this a mere coincidence, or does it hint at cultural connections spanning the vast breadth of Eurasia? It is a question that remains unanswered, lost somewhere in the silent depths of history and the enduring mystery of the Siberian landscape. As the waters recede, the skeletal remains of submerged trees emerge from the riverbed. This is a familiar sight, a testament to the seasonal floods that inundate riverbanks and forests. Yet, when the ancient trunks pulled from the Irtysh riverbed are subjected to radiocarbon dating, the results defy simple explanation. In several locations, these submerged trees are far older than any conventional flooding scenario could account for. In the 1980s, analysis of trunks recovered near Tobolsk revealed an astonishing age of approximately 8,000 years. This places their growth during the Holocene climatic optimum, a period when the region experienced a warmer, wetter climate than today. These were not trees felled by a sudden flood. Instead, they grew on land that the river would later claim as its own. The Irtysh, over millennia, shifted its course, swallowing these ancient forests. However, the precise timeline of these riverbed migrations, the exact how and when of the Irtysh's changing path, remains largely unmapped. Beneath the modern riverbed lie forests that bear witness to a different climate, a different river, a different world. Further downstream, along the Irtysh from Omsk to Semipalatinsk, a historical artery known as the Irtysh Tract existed in the 18th century. This was a meticulously documented network of roads and fortified outposts, established to guard the frontier and facilitate trade. But as the Russian military engineers began to lay out their route, they encountered a remarkable discovery. A significant portion of their planned path was already in existence. Not as a constructed road, but as a well-trodden path, several meters wide, tracing the river's edge. This ancient track, clearly used by people and animals for generations, required minimal clearing, only occasional reinforcement. The engineers noted this in their reports. The way was trodden by us for many years. Who, precisely, had walked this path before the arrival of Russian fortifications, and when this route had last been in active use, was not a subject of discussion in their records. It was accepted as an obvious, self-evident feature of the landscape. The Irtysh riverbank, it seems, has always served as a natural corridor, a conduit for movement across the vast expanse of western Siberia and the Kazakh steppes. For millennia, anyone tree evidence of their passage, until it formed a ready-made route, discovered and utilized by the Russian pioneers. Among the peoples who have historically inhabited the Irtysh banks, the Kazakhs, the Siberian Tatars, the Khanty, there persists a deep-seated tradition. The belief that the river itself possesses the ability to emit sounds, omens that foretell events, not in a mystical sense, but in a literal physical one. They spoke of hearing sounds emanating from the water, sounds they interpreted as warnings. Modern hydroacoustics offers a partial explanation for this ancient lore. Large rivers, in specific sections where the flow interacts with the riverbed's topography and the surrounding geological structures, generate low-frequency vibrations. These oscillations can fall within the infrasound range, a spectrum of sound below the threshold of human hearing, yet perceptible as a physical sensation. These ancient forests, submerged and silent for millennia, whisper tales of a lost world, carried on the currents of a river that remembers. A subtle tremor, a disquieting hum beneath the surface of perception. It is an inexplicable unease, a primal sense of presence that defies rational explanation. Yet, under specific meteorological conditions, the very frequency of these subtle vibrations shifts, breaching the threshold of human hearing. Remarkably, the geographical locations where this phenomenon is most pronounced often coincide with sites revered in traditional cultures. These are not random points on a map. They are designated as places of power, locations where one might seek solace or, conversely, where it was warned one must not linger after dusk. The correlation between this physically real acoustic anomaly and millennia of human practice in identifying sacred or significant riverine points is far from coincidental. For generations, without the aid of sophisticated instruments, people intuitively identified these potent loci through direct physical sensation. In 2015, an expedition mounted by Tumen University deployed hydrophones across several stretches of the middle Irtysh River. On 2 of these specific locations, infrasonic pulses were recorded, their origin remaining stubbornly unidentified. Crucially, both of these sites corresponded precisely with areas locals had long referred to as unsettled places. The findings of this expedition, though published in a regional scientific journal, failed to capture widespread attention. The Irtysh is diminishing. This is not a metaphorical lament, nor a speculative conjecture. It is a documented hydrological reality. Over the past half-century, the water discharge in the river's middle course has decreased by approximately 1/3. The water levels have fallen. Islands that were once submerged beneath the flow are now exposed. Sections of the riverbed, previously deep and navigable, have become alarmingly shallow. The official explanation points to water diversion for irrigation in the upper reaches, particularly within the Chinese portion of the river basin. This is a valid contributing factor, undeniably impacting the river's overall water balance. However, hydrologists observe that the reduction in discharge significantly exceeds what can be attributed solely to this diversion. A portion of the Irtysh's water is vanishing through other means. One compelling hypothesis centers on alterations to the river's subterranean feeding regime. The Irtysh relies substantially on groundwater, drawing from ancient aquifers accumulated over millennia. If these subterranean reservoirs are being depleted, or if shifts in the regional thermal regime are modifying their interaction with the river, the Irtysh receives less replenishment from below. Verifying this hypothesis presents a considerable challenge, as the groundwater aquifers within the Irtysh basin have not been exhaustively surveyed. The peoples who have dwelled along the Irtysh for countless generations perceive the river as an immutable constant, a force that had always been and would always endure. A Kazakh legend proclaims, "As long as the Irtysh flows, the earth stands." The Irtysh still flows, yet with each passing decade, it carries a little less of its former volume. What precisely is befalling this river, a waterway older than the surrounding mountains, and what its future portends, remains one of the most critical and persistently debated questions in Central Asian hydrology. The Irtysh predates the very mountains it carves through. Cities have risen on its banks, built by peoples whose names are now lost to history. Within its waters lie artifacts from forgotten civilizations. Its depths conceal ancient forests, some dating back 8,000 years. Its inaudible whispers, its infrasonic song, were heard by human ears long before our time, and those ancient listeners understood the profound meaning held within its mysterious sounds. The river, a silent witness to epochs, now whispers a tale of change, a narrative etched not only in its receding waters, but in the very earth beneath our feet. The Great Irtysh, a river that has carved its path through the Eurasian heartland for millennia, now faces a silent, inexplicable crisis. Its waters, once a symbol of life and continuity, are receding, diminishing at a rate that baffles scientists and confounds local populations. This gradual yet undeniable loss is meticulously documented, a stark testament to a changing landscape. Yet, the precise reasons behind this phenomenon remain shrouded in mystery. For millions of years, the Irtysh has flowed, a silent witness to the Earth's ancient dramas. It carries within its currents the echoes of a past we can only imagine, a past it has observed with stoic indifference. Now, its diminished flow whispers a new, unsettling narrative, a story of ecological uncertainty. What secrets does this ancient waterway hold? What forces are at play, draining its life?